Season 2 of Battlefield 2042 is already live as you're watching this. It had almost a surprise drop with not a whole lot of warning. Combined with the news that DICE is going to be bringing back the classic Battlefield classes and putting the specialists into those as many people were hoping, it begs the question, is DICE finally getting serious about saving this game? Well, Boris seems to think so at least.
Now we get serious.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves and call this a redemption arc for Battlefield 2042 just yet, because the news is not all good, and there are still definitely some issues with the game, even with what's now a more steady flow of content. In this video, I want to look at what we have right now in Season 2, what is supposed to drop later on in the season, what is being promised for the future core development of the game, and we're going to compare that to what the previous titles have offered and see how 2042 is holding up and how it might hold up better, maybe just down the line. This video is sponsored by Apex Gaming PCs, and if you guys remember on my last video last week, I just upgraded to a 4K monitor, and my Apex Gaming PC, which is my actual primary rig, is holding up just great. Here in Battlefield 2042, I'm getting easily 90 FPS with just about every setting cranked up at 4K. That's pretty nuts. Thanks to my Apex PC, this video is now recorded and brought to you guys in full 4K, and if you guys are looking to upgrade your PC and possibly even go 4K as well, you should be looking at Apex pre-builds. Follow the link just down below and you can see where I've got 3 pre-spec'd out builds with the Apex build team to play games like Battlefield really well. There's a price point there for everybody, and if you use code RangerDave on checkout, you can save up to $250 off of your purchase. So here we are in Season 2 of Battlefield 2042. Again, this was almost a surprise launch. We got very little notice and a launch trailer just at the end of last week, and it was already live this Tuesday with the new map and most of the new content, just lacking a couple of things like there's an upcoming random vehicle spawn, a Polaris transport that for some reason has not made it into the patch here on day 1. I'm going to go over what Season 2 is bringing to the table just for a few minutes, and then I want to talk about the promised changes to classes, classic Battlefield classes, the specialists, and some also disappointing news about both the speed of these content drops and some features that DICE has already said are just not being considered right now. In Season 2, you've got those 2 new vehicles, both of them light transports, but while the Polaris is a random spawn just for getting from point A to point B, the EBLC Ram is a slightly armored transport with some turret upgrade options. You also have a new specialist, and to my pleasant surprise, despite the fact that he is able to place down the only emplaced guns in the game, they are very well balanced. Both the overheat, the fire rate, and the spread of those turrets, as well as their health and the recharge to place a new one, It's all actually really well thought out and well balanced. At distance, these turrets are really only suppressive devices or a good way to get headshot if you're sitting there on top of one. But up close, especially if you're pushing a flag, you can do a real cheeky maneuver where if you're with your team, you got a little bit of backup on your sides, hopefully. You can peek that corner, drop your turret down, get on it, and get a couple of really fast surprise kills. I did that multiple times with this turret and found that to be my favorite way to play with this new specialist, whose name is Charlie Crawford, by the way, in case I hadn't mentioned that just yet. Very strange still to be playing as hero characters in a Battlefield game and, shooting yourself on an enemy turret, but you just have a giant red glow stick to show that, oh no, it's the enemy glowing. Still not a fan of the specialist as a system, but we are most definitely stuck with him now. And again, this is a fun one that is quite well balanced. We're also getting a good amount of new weapons here in this season. The AM-40, which is a assault rifle variant, is the only one that I've unlocked so far, but you also have the AVANCYS, I have no idea how to pronounce that, light machine gun, which finally is fleshing out our light machine gun options, and you have the PF-51 pistol, which is apparently a full auto sidearm. I'm not too worried about it being full auto. We already have a burst sidearm that a lot of people don't realize is burst. I'm hoping that it's going to be a balanced option and you're not going to have snipers, pushing objectives with their SMG sidearm here and also still having their sniper rifle. I am hoping for a balance. We'll see once it gets into players' hands. The weapon I have used a bunch, the AM-40, felt really, really good. It required absolutely no learning curve. I just dropped into a classic Portal Battlefield 3 rush mode and grabbed it as my primary and went to town. Recoil felt controllable, the iron sights are solid, you really don't need a hollow sight, it just felt good. So thumbs up, another assault rifle. Hopefully we're going to see the other weapon categories like those sidearms and LMGs get additional attention, as I think the game does have plenty of assault rifles now. Speaking of new guns though, we are getting two Battlefield Portal, I'll call them remastered guns, rethought guns, playable in the base version of the game. The M16A3 as well as the M60 LMG. They can be unlocked via assignments, although I've heard that they aren't great in their current form and are probably enjoyable to play with just for nostalgia's sake. Portal also got 5 new weapons spread out across all of the different games, Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, and Battlefield 1942. But that brings us to the real meat of this season, not the battle pass and the ridiculous number of skins you can unlock for your specialist, but the new map named Stranded. Outside of all the jokes about the number of shipping containers in Battlefield 2042's maps, this map played way better than I was expecting. I was expecting a tiny corridor throughout the ship with a little bit of flanking options on the side, basically a ship version of lockers, a map that I never really enjoyed in Battlefield 4. That kind of infantry grind gameplay never was my style, but Stranded here kind of straddles the fence, if you will. It is a lot bigger than it looked in the trailer. There are a ton of outskirt points to fight over, all with variable terrain and a lot of cover. Yeah, I had some pretty good fights in the ship itself, some ridiculous corridor lockdowns and some grenade wars in breakthrough mode, but the most fun that I had on this map was actually just zooming around the outskirts, fighting over those outer points. Even though this map is a bit faster paced and a little bit more compressed, 128 players still felt like too much at times, just because so many people would want to spawn in the ship to fight those close quarters battles. There's still a really bad problem in the Battlefield series with players being spawn lemmings, where they just follow their teammate to the nearest horde of enemies, and then you have your giant mass of teammates fighting the enemy's giant mass of enemies, kind of in that same focused area. That's where the server performance tends to drop, the client frame rate tends to drop, you get killed in less frames than it feels like you should, and I know I got kills around the ship that felt like I was getting way too fast hit markers and kills. And so I really wonder if with this higher player count, which I still think is doable, I don't think they should scrap the higher player count. It's just something's not working, and I wonder if maybe just limiting the amount of people that can spawn in one area might be one way to deal with the overall server performance as well as just the unfun grind, in my opinion, of having so much of the server in those smaller areas. It's a good sized map. I really wish people would spread out and check out those outer points. So yeah, Season 2 content, not bad. Definitely an improvement over Season 1's total content count. Although I do think I preferred Season 1's map, this one, again, plays a lot better than I would have expected looking at the trailer. Let's talk about some downsides now. The first obvious one is we are getting a slower content drip feed than previous Battlefield games. Yes, Battlefield 1 and 5 had a pretty long delay before the first full content launched. Using Battlefield 1 as an example, yes, we had a long wait, almost 6 or 7 months for that first DLC, but when it dropped we had 4 new maps, tons of new guns, an entire new faction, and a just absolute ton of content for that first DLC drop for Battlefield 1. Battlefield 5's rough launch marketing-wise led to inconsistent support from DICE, but it still felt like once content got rolling, it was faster than this. Now, if DICE can keep up this pace, a couple new vehicles, a handful of new guns, and a new map every 3 months or so, that's a solid pace, and we do have those remastered maps on the way as well. That's not new content, but they did do a really good job with Kaleidoscope, but I am now looking forward much more to seeing what they do with those other older maps. The other bad news is that DICE has confirmed that there are no plans right now to add a server browser to the main part of the game. You just have the server browser in portal mode. We've talked about this a ton already, but Battlefield games are always better with a server browser, and it's a big part of keeping a long-term community going. It's really obnoxious to have your lobby disbanded and for you to have to go into the matchmaking queue at the end of every single round. But it looks like that is sticking around. And that is unfortunately a pretty big negative for overall game quality of life. What is a better system, and quite encouraging though, is the news about the specialists. They are going back into the classic Battlefield classes, although it does sound like this is a long ways off. Maybe even not in Season 3. It may be well into next year before this rather core change is brought to the game. This should help with the one player can try everything issue that I think Classes helps to prevent. There's just so many players running heavy anti-vehicle loadouts where they have C4 and rockets, and there's just no restrictions for, your combination of primary weapon and gadgets right now. I think the class division is going to help that, but it does sound like it's really, really far off. I also want to point out that the server performance in this patch is rough, again, as usual on launch week. It will probably settle out, as is the usual case for Battlefield patches, but I will say that the game does not feel nearly as polished time to kill and performance-wise as a game this far after launch really should. Everything just feels a little bit off still, and I really don't find myself wanting to play more than just an hour or two here or there. Can we call this a redemption arc? Well, I'm actually starting to think that this game will get a lot more support than I had ever envisioned after how the launch went, and some of those initial issues with the game's core design, like the maps and how the specialists were treated. DICE is, I think, accepting more and more often that they are going to have to accept some of these community requests as what the overall player base of the game really does want. So hopefully we'll see them continue to listen, even if it looks like it's going to take quite a while for these changes to drop. At the end of the day, I'll say what I usually do about 2042. If you already bought a copy, this is a decent size update, some nice new content. If you've got it installed, you should check it out, because I did have quite a few fun rounds there, and we'll just have to see where the game goes next. For now, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.